to go and eradicate step 1, the fire hazard, and then reserve step 2 to research and review the options that are available and prepare the public and the communities for the possible utilization of herbicide use. I think it would be irresponsible for supervisors to be sitting up here, in effect, reversing a Department of Transportation policy that a number of people have put out there, put a lot of work into to get in place. And so in that regard here, I think those people need to be brought in as our partners too. Perhaps Supervisor Smith, you've brought those folks in and talked to the people who were instrumental in taking on roadside spraying and aerial spraying, so on and so forth, the history of herbicide use in Mendocino County. But it's a divisive issue, potentially a very divisive issue. I would hate to think that we would be doing that when it's another step down the road. I'd like to come back and revisit that at a time when we say, yeah, we've eliminated the fire hazard. Now, how do we keep these buggers from coming back and coming at us again? That do not require herbicide use or require this amount of herbicide over this period of time. I would support any further discussion in step 2 at this time, somewhere in the future, but not as the 1-2 step that's being presented to us at this moment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I think Supervisor Colfax does raise an important issue with respect to the Pandora's box concern. Actually, Casper was the center of the concerns about roadside spraying. My read of this policy doesn't indicate that roadside spray policy that DOT has would change in any way. However, I think Supervisor Colfax does raise a point with respect to the public and the public's investment in the topic, and it might be better to proceed that we have a more substantive discussion about that component of this. So possibly we could move this forward and just remove the 2 sections with respect to the herbicide use, go forward with everything else. But I think we absolutely need to take a look at that, and then let's get our partners and our team going and bring that information back to us as soon as possible with respect to what the applications would be like, be more specific about it. Is a one-time application possible? If so, how and when? All those points. Because I don't think we want this to become divisive. So maybe we could move it forward with taking those 2 sections out. And again, it is my understanding that this does nothing to change the roadside spray policy that DOT already has in place. Is that correct?
Yes, it does not affect, DOT just wanted it understood in terms of this, the eradication of gorst at Casper, that their policy to not spray herbicides would be withstanding. Mr. Chair, if I might also, just for, so that the board understands that the staff was acting within direction and diligently from the September 10th, 2007 Public Resources Minutes, the committee directive. General consensus of the committee is to direct staff as follows, thereby clearing this item from committee. Draft a resolution defining the county's concerns regarding gorst.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Supervisor Pinches?
Just one other point, Mr. Chairman, I want to add. Also, it's Caltrans philosophy, or their policy, that they respect Mendocino County's ban on roadside spraying, also in state right-of-ways too. That was a big issue about 10, 12 years ago. And so, I mean, if we're going to deviate from that policy, then maybe Caltrans would want to change their policy. And like Supervisor Colfax said, I don't know if we want to. It's kind of a slippery slope to go down to. And to keep in mind, private landowners have the ability. We're only talking about not doing it on public lands. Private landowners have every access to every herbicide out there to do it on their private lands, so it's not restricting them in any way. We're just talking about, I just think to deviate from our policy of no herbicides on public lands is something that I want to stick to, and I'm not willing to deviate from it.
I appreciate those comments, Supervisor. having worked, I think, on the original gorse eradication project in excess of over 12 years ago, and having applied hundreds of gallons, if not thousands of gallons of jellified gasoline in an effort to eradicate this product, having seen that fail and actually encourage the germination of seeds, I can guarantee you that removing it by fire is not an option. Removing it by mechanical methods or even hand methods is a huge advantage to the removal of this product. But I can also guarantee you that without the future biological means of eradicating the sprouts, etc., and the effectiveness of the spread of this infestation, without today's use of spotted use of herbicides, we are not going to be successful. This is a rapidly spreading situation that is outside, I believe, the demand for the cessation of use of herbicides in Mendocino County. This is an outstanding situation that was never really thought of when we imposed that policy. So unless new technology and new invention and new pests are brought into the area to do it biologically, I have to stand here and say, for public safety alone to contain this infestation, sure, there's no herbicide going to be sprayed in Casper without somebody turning out to make comment on it. Let's not go down that fool's errand here. As vocal as Casper is, it's going to have to be with their acceptance. And I can guarantee you, to gain their acceptance, it's going to have applications on no wind days. It's going to have to be on close application to the actual plants. It's not going to be wind casted. There is an exception to every rule. The rule being a prohibition on herbicides. This is the exception. This is an infestation that must be dealt with today, or eventually we will have a public safety problem. And I think this is a great first step. But John, in regards to public property versus private property, this has to be addressed across the board. One of the biggest players is state parks. They have to be an active part in this. We, as the county at the landfill site, have to be an active part. The public-private partnership has to take place here, or we're not going to win the war. I don't want to get too passionate about this, but this is a pretty straightforward thing here. And we've now spent almost an hour discussing something that I thought was a darn slam dunk. And I understand your position. You're very passionate about it. But there is an exception to every rule, and I ask for your exception today on this issue. Supervisor Delwa. I'm sorry, Supervisor Smith.
Well, I concur with your the majority of your comments, Supervisor Weinberger. I think that you're heading in the right direction. I think the problem with this is that it sort of opens up that window without a lot of explanation, and so the public, the concerns that could come that Supervisor Colfax is referencing, I think surely would. So I think we have an obligation to spell this out a little bit better, be more specific. But I know what you're saying. We really absolutely need to take a look at that as a tool, as a component of the bigger picture. So I'm certainly not opposed to that at all. I think we just need to figure out, how to do that. Let's just get the rest of this moving forward, and then we'll get that component back for more scrutiny and more review, so we can have the partners